Ik heb hem ook al eens terug rechtstreeks eraan gehangen hoor, maar dan dat moet ook niet.
Ja.
Ik wil er wel van, ja, ik kan toch dit ertussenuit halen als je hebt geschilderd, maar
Wat hebben we gedaan?
dat is eigenlijk gewoon voor de HDMI, voor de HDMI uit. Dus die lost, ja, dat kan eigenlijk bijna niet, maar dat is niet lostrekken, dat verandert ook niks. Dus het routerke, het switchke wat ertussen stikt.
Ja, en dan gaan die netwerkaansluitingen?
Netwerkaansluitingen gaan in naar mijn laptop en naar de streamer.
Ja.
Kan ook niet, en in naar de computer, ja.
Ja, de computer dus. Die zie ik, maar al die andere toestellen zie ik niet.
Ah.
Je moet helemaal DHCP aanstaan. Hè?
Dat weet ik niet.
Er is niks van fix toestanden, want dat gaat niet werken.
Eén is mijn Mac en de andere is dat switchke, sorry, die streamer.
Ja, maar daar staat niks aan DHCP of zo, of nog iets. Zolang je geen IP-adres heeft, gaat die ook niet lukken.
Die heeft een IP-adres, die is dat IP-adres van dat streamerke, dus 10.0.1.150.
Ja.
Heeft u aan de kaart? Ja. Ik had nog even bij een seminar dat ik bij mezelf was aan het zien, het is nog een flipchart.
Border.
Okay.
Yeah, you only get there via tunnel, 17-kilometer tunnel. Yes. Hi.
Morning.
Feeling all ready to go?
Ready to go.
Yes.
It looks like a wow.
It's another wow. I'm so amazed by Antwerp. It's such a great city.
But this is probably the fanciest place.
Well, last night was pretty fancy.
They made some interesting choices. There's more places. Actually, the KBC building would have been cool if it would not be closed or renovated. Next door there is also
They are building a lot, so a lot is changing.
So you're starting in 10 minutes? Yes.
Oh wow.
Dit is de persoon die alles presenteert. Dan wil ik de naam ervan geven. Oh, ik weet het,
Oh, we hebben hier bij de spaces. Voilà.
Bert, heb jij inderdaad als een telefoon in orde of ga je aan het paneel staan? Of
Ja, we staan misschien iets anders.
Ik ga de aan van jou zetten.
Oké, we gaan wel aan iemand zijn. Dat is goed voor mij.
Ja, die bouwt voor de presentaties. Mensen die het ook zitten.
Yes. Dat is allemaal geregeld.
Je moet gewoon niets doen. Dan lukt het. Een beetje filmen dan, dat is al.
Meestal hebben we al veel misgedaan. We gaan proberen niks meer te doen.
Een beetje filmen. Dat was vanochtend even anders.
Was de, ja, ja, je is ook op het idee gekomen van dat om een halve dag te verplaatsen. Hè? Dat
Ja.
is een
Ja.
derde locatie straks te doen. Een livestream opzetten is allemaal zo iets met wat risico.
Ja. Maar ja, we hebben hier 2 keer getest. En de tweede keer was alles goed eigenlijk. Hè?
Ja, maar we hebben inderdaad niet getest of dat op die AirMedia.
Ja. Ja.
Ah, welkom koffie. En dan ben jij de introduction afgevlogen.
Ja, ik neem het over van mijn directeur, want hij kan daar niet.
Dan zeg je dat op zijn.
Nathalie de Schipper. En die sinaasappel, boompjes, plantjes, ook van jullie? Of?
Ja.
Oké. En de bus zit vast? Of,
Nee, ik denk dat die om kwart voor hier de laatste is.
Ja, maar de bus is niet, ze zijn allemaal te goed.
Dus dat is
Ja, alleen.
Je hoogte, dat is makkelijk.
Wat een duo hier. Nee, ik ben niet met crowdfunding bezig. Omdat die ervaring heb. En ik heb ook niet door alle starters. Ja. Maar nee, dat staat op KBC.
Ja, dat doe ik ook. Veel discharge.
Maar dan leer je ook wel van wat is er die zijn op alle fronten, die zijn maar ook van de crowdfunding. Hij was ervan overtuigd van, ik zeg kijk, nou ja, we kennen nu allemaal één berichtje en dat is het. Blijkbaar voor ja, ik denk dat gemobiliseerd worden, maar goed zoeken.
Dan ga ik grafisch maken, ik ga voor mezelf nog eens bij.
Oh ja, moet ik ook op aan.
Plaats onderuit? Ja. Ja, ik heb dus gebruikt van die ateliers. Dus echt om echt meer ideeën, zo wil ik echt gebruikt onder, maar ze hebben nog niet nagedacht van hoe gaan we dat dan en ik heb al reward en dan die meeste campagnes begeleid, maar dan ik het nog niet meer begeleid.
En in misschien wel het foto's
Als je kijkt naar Polen, dan zie je het hele dat is ja, zo'n bent de neoscores, ja, dat was ja, om snel te groeien.
en dan nog tijdens de sterren als je anders
Soms is het in de metro.
Good morning. Is everybody awake? Just trying the microphone. No, just trying to get you sat down. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Bonjour. Guten Morgen. Buongiorno. Buenos dias. Bon dia. Only Italian. I'm sorry. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Happy to see all of you back. There will be a few more people joining us from the city of Antwerp this morning for another day of interesting talks and sharing. But first, we kick off the day here at this beautiful location. I heard from many of you that you were again impressed by how versatile and interesting Antwerp is, and this is the VOCA building here is definitely one of the nicer hidden gems if you've never been here. That's why I'll give the word to Nathalie de Schepper from VOCA to give you a bit of an introduction on that organization.
My height. Good morning, everyone, and welcome at the Antwerp Chamber of Commerce and Industry. My name is Nathalie de Schepper, and I work here as a startup advisor in the service department. So today I'm going to run you quickly through what the Chamber is and what we do to support entrepreneurship here in Antwerp. Now, first of all, I want to excuse the head of my department, Sven de Vocht. He would have loved to have given this presentation, but he couldn't be here because he had an important meeting. So yeah, today you'll just have to do it with me, sorry. So let's start off with some key facts about our organization. So we are a private organization and we have over 3,000 members. Here in our offices, we have 55 people who work here, and on a yearly basis, we have a turnover of around 8 million euros. The Chamber organizes a lot of different activities, but all the activities, they are focused around 3 pillars. And those pillars are, first of all, lobbying. And we lobby on a local and a national level to improve economic conditions for entrepreneurs. We also organize a lot of networking activities to bring together entrepreneurs with businesses from different sizes, in different sectors, and in different stages of life, so they can connect through us. And last but not least, we have our services, and I'm going to zoom in on them. As you can see, we have 2 types of services. First of all, we have the administrative services, like ATA carnets and certificates of origin. And those are all documents that are related to import and export, and entrepreneurs who need them, they can get them here at our reception. Then we have strategic services, and strategic services, they contain coaching, giving entrepreneurs advice, and individual and collective programs. We have two main target groups for our strategic services, and those are SMEs and multinationals. I'm going to zoom in on the SMEs to paint a picture in how we deal with things here. As you can see, we have 5 groups in which all our services for SMEs can be put. The first one is the pre-startup phase, and in the pre-startup phase we have our main program, which is called Brio Stand-Up. Now in Brio Stand-Up, we help the entrepreneur who has an idea to get from the business idea to a business opportunity. And at the end of the program, the entrepreneur can say, okay, we know now it's feasible, do we want to go forward or not with the project? But there are also entrepreneurs who do not want to start with an idea, but they want to start up through an acquisition. And if they want to acquire another business, then we help them through the acquisition process, which is kind of a hurdle here in Belgium. And then we support them to make the acquired business more successful. As you can see, there are also additional financial services. And the most important one is for us is crowdfunding. We are real believers of crowdfunding, and certainly for those in the pre-startup stage, because it's an ideal tool to test if there is any market potential for your product or service. Because then you know, as an entrepreneur, if people are willing to pay for your product or service or not. But crowdfunding is part of a bigger picture of the financing mix. And in our program, the financing mix, we try to coach entrepreneurs to obtain the most ideal mix of different sources of financing. And as you can see, the financing mix runs throughout the different life stages because it's important in every life stage for the entrepreneur. The second stage is a startup stage, and there we have our main program called Brio Startup. And in Brio Startup, we focus on business development. And there we help the entrepreneur when they've acquired their first customer until they've reached a turnover of around 100,000 euros. There we also have Investor Readiness, and Investor Readiness is a program to help those entrepreneurs in the startup stage, but even later on, to attract investors, and we also coach them how to handle the inflow of external capital. In the first growth stage, we have Brio Scale Up. And in Brio Scale Up, we help those entrepreneurs when they've ended at a turnover of around 100,000 euros, and we want them to grow up into 1 million euros. There we focus on cash flow requirements and possible cash flow problems that are normal in such a growth stage. Then we also have our Export Academy, and our Export Academy is for those people who are thinking about going international. And there they can explore different regions, different countries, and they can learn how to deal with the export process. In the growth stage, we have 2 main programs, and they're called Plato and Accelero. Now, Plato is a program where we help entrepreneurs by peer-to-peer learning to professionalize their management. And Accelero is for the entrepreneurs with really big ambitions, where we have a Group A, which focuses on a growth up until 5 million euros, and Group B, which focuses for a growth up until 20 million euros. Every participant of the Accelero program also commits themselves to grow 20% each year. So those are big but also exciting ambitions for those young entrepreneurs. We also have lead companies, and lead companies is for the Antwerp-based companies that are the hidden gems among us. So they have a leading role when we look at them worldwide. So every participant of the program is in the top 5 in their sector worldwide. And of course, they want to stay in pole position, and by peer-to-peer learning, exchanging experiences, they are able to do so. Growth through acquisition is in fact the same as the startup through acquisition, where we also help them with the acquisition process. But it's also very difficult for entrepreneurs to integrate the new acquired business into their already existing business or businesses. So that's also where we coach in the growth through acquisition program. And then we have the last but not least stage, Every entrepreneur at some time thinks about selling their business. And if they've decided to sell their business, they can come and join us in Transisio. And Transisio is a program where we help entrepreneurs to get the value they want for their company. So what we do is we look at their business and we try to clean up their balance sheet, and we do some quick innovations so they have a rapid growth. And when you're in the growth stage, of course, you can get the value you hoped for. And then the last one is the Next Gen program. And the Next Gen program, there we have as a customer segment family businesses. And within the family businesses, we are going to target the family relatives that are either already working in the business or want to work in the family business, and to see now what are their ambitions for the future. Do they at one day want to be the head of the company, yes or no? And if they want to, then we can help them to take over the wheel someday. So this is not my PowerPoint, but because normally it was another slide. But yeah, I would like you to enjoy yourself today. And if you have any more questions about our different services, then you can always address me after the presentations, or you can add me on LinkedIn or send me an email, the email which I was going to show you on the slides. And you can ask me detailed questions about our program, and if you want, for example, an international collaboration, we always love that. So thank you very much.
Okay, how to support women entrepreneurs? That's a question that was raised in Sevilla, and that is a subject that Marina Larios is going to talk to us about, because they have developed a methodology based on self-efficacy, if I pronounce that correctly. So, welcome, Marina.
I assume I just have to, would you pull that up here? Next, there we go. Or should I do it from here? Thank you very much. You pronounce my name perfectly, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you very much to Pablo from the Chamber of Commerce, who invited me to talk about mentoring circles. Now, when I talk about entrepreneurship, I'm very passionate because I myself am an entrepreneur. I've been running my business for 17 years. And when I think about why did it happen, and then that's why I think I haven't stopped studying psychology. Because entrepreneurship is the question that I'm going to ask you. What gets you out of bed every morning? Are you doing what you always wanted to do? You know, when we are young and we have all these crazy dreams, do we just forget about them? And why suddenly we found ourselves 10, 15 years later doing something else? And I'm fascinated working in entrepreneurship for so many years. My journey started, I'm originally from Mexico, and I came to the UK. They told me it was fantastic weather. They lied. It's an island, yes, but not a tropical island. But I think that journey is what really defined me in terms of setting up businesses. Because when you have left everything you know of, all your networks, your languages, your friends, the friend you know is a lawyer, the friend that you know that can help you with marketing, you have to become very resourceful. So that's what took me to my research. Really, entrepreneurship is about psychology. Everything we do is about why we think the way we think and why we feel the way we feel. And why sometimes for some, risk is so exciting. And for some, it's petrifying, so much that you can be stuck in a job you don't like forever, just because of the thought of changing is very painful. When we talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about finance and business skills and business canvas, and you need to know about modeling. Yeah, very important. Definitely, I think it is very important. But when you look at people like Richard Branson, he didn't even finish his university. He didn't go to university. He always talks about start with the core of the entrepreneur, how they think. Make entrepreneurs from children. Make them manage risk. Make them resourceful. Then the business canvas and the finance will come along. Because if that would be so easy, how come when you give somebody £5, they can turn out of £5 a business? And when you give somebody 1 million, they just can't. Because it all starts with the core. It starts with how we think, how we feel. And when I was doing research at the university, looking at the lack of female entrepreneurs, and myself, that's why I decided, after doing so much research, to take the plunge. I thought, I've done enough research, let me put it into practice, how it feels to leave your secure job at a university, not be from the country, and decided to set up a business. And I found really interesting things in my journey. People saying to me, why would you like to leave your job? You know how many, the statistics about how many people in businesses, they fail. You won't make it, but your job is great. You have already left your country. Why would you do that? And something that I realize is that you really need to stick to what you believe, but it's pure psychology. When I look at statistics about the lack of female entrepreneurs, in the UK it's around 19% compared to Europe, that is around 33%, so the UK was still not doing so well. I look at always the same things that were stopping female entrepreneurs, and that is confidence. Now, it's fascinating when you look at statistics all around the world, because women all around the world, we're becoming more clever, we're studying more, and we're getting better results than men. But we're still underrepresented everywhere, from the film industries to management, to entrepreneurship, to directorships. So what's going on? And you look at countries like Scandinavia, they are more advanced, but still the equality is not there, it's not still 50 and 50. And then when we look back at women, I found out when I was doing research that they were coming to my programs with more MBAs than men. They were coming to my programs with better, senior positions than men, and they were still thinking, I don't think I can do this. So when I was at the university doing research, I started looking with the Department of Education in terms of psychology and with human resources to come up with something looking at what were the challenges. And then when I left the university, I decided to set up my business, Innova, and look at methodology that could help women like myself set up in business and grow the businesses. And something that I think it was great about the methodology is that I brought in a lot of experts, from women entrepreneurs running their businesses to psychologists, and asked them, what are the main challenges? And something that I found out, that is Albert Bandura, the dad of self-efficacy, is that self-efficacy is everything that relates to our performance. Self-efficacy in a nutshell is the belief that you might have, or you have, that you can do something good. It relates to self-confidence, but it's much more than self-confidence. Now, Albert Bandura did a lot of research about how to improve self-efficacy. Now, the important thing about self-efficacy is that it directly links to how we perform. So I'll give you an example. If Pablo and I, we both speak French, but Pablo believes and has always believed that he's fantastic with languages. Even his parents always told him, God, Pablo, you're a natural, you have natural talent. And my teacher had a horrible teacher in French who always said to me, Marina, why don't you learn another language? Why don't you stop learning languages? So the paradigm that I was brought up with is to believe that I am crap at languages. And that happens a lot if you think about languages or maths or physics, that we just have that, we bought it and we believed it. We are really rubbish at that. Now, as a social scientist, if there will be enough evidence that Pablo and I, we have the same words in French, we have the same grammar structures, we studied the same, that we could be measured in terms of our linguistic ability. But Pablo believes he's better at speaking French. Now, when Pablo speaks French, in terms of neuroscience, his neurons will perform better. He will be much more efficient. And therefore, he will go like, oh, I'm really good. And that efficiency improves performance. The moment I start speaking French and I know I'm rubbish, in terms of my neuron activity decreases, and I start losing the words. And that happens a lot if you think about things you're not thinking you're very good at. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you look at sports in the latest Olympics in the UK, it was 30% training, 70% psychology. You need to start believing you can do it. Because guess what? For the brain, when you start dreaming you are running, the brain activity is the same thing as when you are running. So you can fake it till you make it, because the brain doesn't know you're faking it. That is fantastic, isn't it? So how could we take this methodology of increasing self-efficacy for anyone, right? But for this, of course, it was for female entrepreneurs. So Albert Bandura talks about 4 things that we put in the methodology. And this is for all of you, for all of us. He talks about 4 things about how we can improve self-efficacy. One is performance accomplishments. We never think about all the things we have achieved. We always think about the things we haven't achieved yet. Oh, I haven't learned that. I'm still not very good at. I haven't got that. And that generates what he calls a mind of lacking, a lacking mentality of like, I'm still not very good at because I haven't accomplished. The second thing is about vicarious learning. We need to start learning from others, and also looking at what other people have done. Now, we are like little hamsters, really, really busy. We never stop to think about our thinking. So that's why the methodology has been extremely powerful. Emotional arousal talks about how we manage stress, because if we cannot manage stress properly, we cannot really perform, and forget about increasing our confidence. But the most important thing about Bandura, about emotional arousal, is about how we do our talk, what we call self-talk. You know, we talk to ourselves all the time, non-stop. When we wake up, we're like, oh, I look awful. Oh no, look at my hair. Oh no, where are the keys? Oh, so silly, I lost the keys again. We have an ongoing dialogue with ourselves. And very often, that dialogue is not very positive. So when you start feeling not very good that day, you have to really stop and start thinking, what are you saying to yourself? So he talks about changing that self-talk. And the last one is about, of course, encouragement. When I bring women coming together that want to grow their businesses or want to set up a business, they always say the same thing again and again and again after 17 years. And they say, I thought it was only me. Wow, I thought it was only me thinking, I cannot do that. I thought it was only me that with my master's and my MBA, I was still afraid. There is something lovely about being in a group that everybody can share the same feelings, because entrepreneurship is very lonely. You know, when you go to work, you are with your colleagues and you go like, oh, I'm really not very motivated today. But when you run a business, nobody comes and knocks on the door and goes, wake up, time to check your emails. And guess what? You haven't even been paid for 6 months. It's a very lonely journey, and it's a very easy journey just to quit. So one of the challenges, and we look at the challenges about what was stopping all of us to make changes, in this case, setting up a business. You know, procrastination, this word of mañana, mañana, I'll do it tomorrow, it relates to 2 things. We postpone things because either the task is very difficult, it gives us a lot of anxiety. Think when you had to do your dissertation or present an exam, you will just put it off. Or it is very boring. That's the 2 ways that we procrastinate. Now, when you're setting up a business, oh my God, isn't there anxiety? You have to do everything. You have to sort out your finance, your website, your marketing, your venue, your overheads, your accountant. Of course, you're going to procrastinate. It's a lot of anxiety. Of course, you are lonely. There's no one to encourage you, and your friends usually are working, so they will go like, well, I can't speak to you, I'm at work now. So you have to do it really, really on your own. You don't have that sounding board. And something very important in terms of entrepreneurship is that if I do this I see a lot when entrepreneurs are very, very, of course, on their own. They create their own logo and they think it's great. Well, you need to show it. You know, if Coke will send out a logo, they will have a lot of market research behind the logo. So also using networks that we can work as consumers in market research can be really, really, really good. Having that sounding board, of course, improves your self-confidence. You start learning from others. You start learning about how to be better at achieving things. And voila, you increase self-efficacy. So the methodology is linked to three main aspects. In the UK, we use a lot what we call learning sets, action learning. And action learning is just coming and talking about how you experience change, for example. That's used a lot in the NHS. So what we combine is a mix of coaching, mentoring, and action learning. And I'll explain you why. Coaching, because when we procrastinate, we say, well, I'm going to do this, but it doesn't happen. But if you're in a group, in this case in a mentoring circle, you will have tasks to do for the next session. So the next session, I ask everybody to come up with their own tasks because it's very important ownership. And they might say, okay, I'm going to bring back to the group 3 different type of logos. I'm going to find an accountant and I'm going to prepare my cash flow. And you have to report back to the next time you come to the session. So it works so well. People do in 3 months, they do what they haven't done for years because there is accountability. Now, when we went to school, and I love that because of Pavlov conditioning, it's all about accountability, homework, exams. There's not a lot about independent ownership of the learning. It's always about you're going to be tested. So we are really conditioned to that. So in terms of coaching, it works so well when you have as a coach, the facilitator, and your peers to make you do things. Mentoring is about really having a sounding board, helping, being in a relationship of trust to really check out what you're afraid of. And that's where we change paradigms, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. And action learning is very much about learning by doing. There's really no learning. Think about when you went to university or to school or to primary school. How much do you remember? Remember all these things you studied? How many hours you went a week? How much do you remember? And the things that you remember are the ones that are useful, right? But the other things aren't. So action learning is about really learning by doing. So this is just a chart about self-efficacy. Now, in psychology, how we measure confidence is very much about self-perception. I can think I am, how I will evaluate if I perform well at public speaking is very much about how I perceive myself. So self-efficacy is very much about self-perception, because if you perceive, like the example that I gave you about Pablo and myself speaking French, if I perceive myself speaking better French, I will act and perform better. So this is at the beginning of the mentoring circles. We ask people, in this case, of course, women, to assess themselves in a variety of soft skills. I'm sure it's really small, so you cannot see the font, but it's things about like self-motivation, confidence, assertiveness, entrepreneurial spirit, problem solving, resilience, resourcefulness, work-life balance, getting things done, very important, understanding what's important to me. If you don't understand what's important to you, you will procrastinate, you won't do it, because it's not really important. So that is the beginning of the circle, and look at the end of the circle, the increase of self-efficacy. Therefore, people set up businesses faster, grow their businesses even much faster. This is some feedback that women have talked about, but of course this methodology is not, and we'll talk about it later on, it's not only for women. We have done it for migrants, for men, for women, for young people. And this is what very often they say. The fourth one, the most worthwhile thing was sharing ideas, seeing how others approach it. Of course, as part of the methodology, we don't have competitors, obviously. But looking at how others approach a problem in terms of entrepreneurship is so valuable, because you go like, oh, I did not think about that. So that is one of the things that we see that happens a lot. So we have, as part of the methodology, you have around 5, I would say more than 5 is really, really hard. Between 2 to 4 sessions. 4 sessions is the best. We use a lot of positive psychology. We use a lot of self-reflection. And obviously, we have a lot of tools in between the sessions for them to help them think about their thinking. So let me give you a quick example. And Paula, you cannot participate because you know the answer. Okay, so when we went to school, remember how this was used to call, how they call it? Roman numerals, well done. See, there's something that we still remember. Okay, so those are Roman numerals. So what number is the first one? 3. The next one? And the next one? We had a good teacher, Roman numerals, isn't it? We can tell that. Okay, and this Roman numeral is, we said, 9. So imagine I give you scissors and you can cut this out and you're very creative and I want you to make out of that 9, I want you to make a 4. How will you do it? A 4, sorry? How? Yeah, okay. Somebody else say here you cover you cover it, you cut a horizontal and you have a 4, isn't it? Okay, very entrepreneurial. Okay, and how will you do? So this is how you would do a 4, right? There's a 4, Roman numeral 4. And how would you do again a 6 out of this? The other way around, yeah. Yes, and then of course you can turn it around and you have a 6. Okay, any other ways of doing a 6? And if I give you $1 million, any way of doing a 6? Could that help? Yeah? Okay, unfortunately, I only have 20 minutes because I would love to stay here for 10 minutes, but I'm going to give you the answer. And we go, oh, it's so obvious. But understanding how the brain works is what makes us more efficient. And let me tell you why the brain works like this. The moment you went to the Roman numeral compartments, you can only think Roman numerals because you want to have efficiency. So when we were in the case, remember, we saw a tiger. We would not start thinking about butterflies, right? We would start thinking about everything related to the tiger because we wanted to survive. So we go into groups and categories. The moment we went to Roman numerals, we are only thinking Roman numerals to be efficient. You're not going to another compartment looking for the alphabet. That will be lack of efficiency. However, that is what stops us in terms of creativity. Because the more stressed we are, what happens? Do we go to other compartments or we stick to one compartment? What do you think? To one, because we want efficiency. And if I would have given you time and I would have put 30 pounds, in this case euros, which are going to be stronger than the pound very soon, if I would have put 30 euros, what do you think? Would you have guessed it faster or not? It all depends on you, how you manage stress. For some of you that you would have gone and, okay, I need to think different ways and I still have to remember. Also for some of you would go like, okay, let me think more about Roman numerals. So it's all about how you perceive stress and how do you perceive opportunities. So at the end of the day, the methodology is to help you look at entrepreneurship and yourself, because I do it for people that are feeling stuck at work or whatever in their lives and they want through another transition. Because really the methodology is time out to think about your thinking. Now, very often we think too much and then we act suddenly. Or we get stuck in that. Where do you think we get stuck? In the thinking, and don't even move into the reflection. We don't reflect. We don't think about what we are thinking. It is bad to, go for a loan, or what is not good about a product that we want to launch. But where we really stop is we complain, we say we're going to do things, we promise we're going to do it, but nothing happens. It's in the making it happen where we get stuck. Because many things, we're afraid of change. We think maybe the other side is going to be worse, so we better get stuck where we are. But the interesting thing is that when you look at children, they're very good at this transition. They make everything happen. Doesn't matter. They're not so afraid of making mistakes. And something happens in education, and that's why education is so important in entrepreneurship. That ability of, it doesn't matter. And if you look at Walt Disney, who failed 4 or 5 times, he would envisage failing very differently to many of us. So at the end of the day, it's not the failing. And recently I was in a concentration camp in Poland, horrific experience. And I was speaking to the tourist, to the guide who was explaining it. And his grandparents, one died and one survived the concentration camp. And he was saying that it's all about how strong you are, because at the end of the day, everybody had the same circumstances and conditions. So it's very much about looking at us rather than looking at oh, there's not enough support or funding for entrepreneurship. Now think about this, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. Countries that are very, very wealthy, Europe, Australia, Canada, have less entrepreneurs than India, Latin America. Why? Because that is necessity entrepreneurship, and we are in opportunity entrepreneurship. So if I will all take you in a plane tomorrow and take you to a little village in Mexico and give you $10 each and say, I'll come back and pick you up in 4 months, oh my God, you will be so entrepreneurial. Because there's no time of like, do I want this? Do I don't want? The problem that we have is we have so much choice. So sometimes having choice is the opposite of entrepreneurship, because we are just do not know where to go. And we don't want to be ever in a position of necessity entrepreneurship. And that's what I see when I do a lot of my programs in Mexico with indigenous women. Oh my God, aren't they entrepreneurial and resilient and resourceful? You know what? You need to feed your kids, so you don't start thinking, am I confident or not? They don't even know what's that. They're just going to get and do it. You don't want to be in that position. But also you have to learn about human psychology and what makes us, I'm just trying to go back. Oh gosh. Okay, I did something. It doesn't matter. Okay, thank you. Now, I love this, and I have it in my key ring, because it's true. If it's, okay, I'll move. Thank you. Almost there. Okay. If it's important to us, we'll find a way. If not, we'll find an excuse. And aren't we amazing with our excuses? Oh my God. We can make up with like, it's not the right moment. I'm gonna lose weight, but why? If it's Christmas coming soon, I'll do it later. Well, April is coming, so I'll go to the gym after when everybody has left in January. So we come up with stories and stories, and we're so good at storytelling that we start believing our excuses. So sometimes you need somebody that says, well, you have been saying that a long time. What is really stopping you? And that is something that in the methodology we try to achieve. Being honest with ourselves and saying what is really stopping us for doing what we wanted always to do. Peter Honey, it's American, who writes a lot about learning and education. I love his phrase where he says, the end of learning is action, not knowledge. So when we are studying, it is also for doing something, not just for knowing about it. And one of the new opportunities we have with Pablo at Chamber of Commerce and with a nice range of partners is an AMIF program that we have just started, where we're going to be testing the circles with migrant women in terms of something called smart volunteering. Now, if you look at statistics, highly skilled migrants all over the world tend to be underemployed. They are doing jobs beneath their talent because of many, many challenges. And I can see that when I do a lot of research. And myself, I'm a migrant coming from Mexico to the UK. So what we're trying to do through the circles is what is called smart volunteering. You know the term working smart. Because if you're going to do voluntary work, at least you have to think about doing it smartly and doing it in areas that can increase your employability and of course, your entrepreneurship. So Pablo and myself will be here all day if you want to ask us more about it. There's more information about the circles on this website. So we do enterprise circles, but we do career circles as well, and mentoring circles. And we just submitted a bit about happiness at work, and they're going to be called happy circles. So watch this space. Please follow us on social media. I'll be delighted to hear from you. I'm always looking for partnerships, ways we can transfer the methodology to other countries, and looking at ways, of course, to improve it. Now, what we love about the methodology is that we were very lucky to have Aberdeen Business School funded by the Scottish Development Agency to look at programs in entrepreneurship that were making a long-term difference. So they follow us, they follow our participants for a long time, academics from the business school, and they found out that the methodologies that look at the entrepreneur himself or herself are not enough, and we do need to start working more with that, because afterwards the hard skills, the business, the finance, the cash flow, the strategy follows, are just really, really the foundation of everything. Thank you very much, and hopefully you will remember what I always tell myself: if it's important to you, you will make it happen. Thank you very much for listening.
things at the same time, so it's thank you. How does Lisbon address, identify, and facilitate immigrant entrepreneurship? That's something Jorge will tell us more about.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Jorge Vieira. I'm from the Lisbon City Council. I work in the Department of Economic Innovation for the city, and I'm going to talk a little bit how to address this subject in our city hall. I divide this presentation in two halves. The first one is about identify and address this entrepreneurship in Lisbon. And then I'm going to present a series of projects that we did in our city hall for you to know. Okay, a little bit of sound. Just checking. Okay, so the identification of the immigrant population working in Lisbon. This is Lisboa Economy Numerous. This is an edition that we do every year in our site. We put it on our site. It's our department we done this identification about companies that are in Lisbon and work, the VAB of those companies, and we have a little part that we address the population that are migrants and work in Lisbon. We're talking about 50,000 people that are registered as working in Lisbon for migrant proveniations. We're talking about 10% of the total of population that works in Lisbon, and 12.7 the population of the metropolitan area region. We have the nationalities here for you to say. We have 20% of Brazilians, 12% of Chinese, 7 Cabo Verde, 5 Romanians, Nepal, Angola, and so on, Ukraine, India, Spain, Bangladesh, and so on and so on. So it is important to know what kind of people we are talking about in Lisbon. These numbers stay most the same 10 years from now. We didn't have any increase of other type of migrations, as I think it happens in other countries of Europe. So this is remains more or less the same in these 10 past years. Okay. Regarding the address and the knowledge, we did a program called DELI, the Diversity of the Economic of Local Integration, 2014 and 2015. With a partnership with the European Council and Policy Migration Group. This project worked like an Interact project. It's the same basis. We had a lot of foreign cities that work with us, and then we created a local platform so that we can know what this entrepreneurship needs. With this project, we identified identification, the discussion, and the reflection about economic integration of immigrants in the city. And the outcome was a recognition of potential and clear advantage of their diversity, creative, and innovation of economic fabric of the city. So this was important because we delivered the report to our authorities, and they have the knowledge that this kind of economic was very important to Lisbon. So it was a very important project. So from the local partnership platform, I think it was relevant to let you know what they tell us. It was the obstacles and how to overcome it. So this were their ideas. What happened in Lisbon? What was the obstacles? So the first one was discrimination, distrust and prejudice, juridical and legal complexity, bureaucracy, language barriers, viability, sustainable business, access to resources and security. And they told us how to overcome it. They told that training and awareness it will be very important. The awareness about the people that are in Lisbon, that they exist and are important for the city. They told us to organize collective actions between all the communities because they are very close in ethnic communities. The Brazilians don't talk too much to the Cape Verdeans, so they told us, let's do something that join together all the communities. More institutional support from the city hall, and qualifications directly to immigrants from the city also, programs from the city to help them. We did a report. It was an extensive report that we delivered to our city mayor and councillors. I highlighted a few points, just I think that was most important, just to make a little resume of it. So the creation of business was assumed by the immigrants as a strategy for action. They prefer to do business than to be employed. The rate of foreign employers in the last 2 decades in Lisbon was higher than the rate of Portuguese employers. They had a lot of difficulties in access to credit and financial institutions. And once again, the report confirmed the contributions in job creation, urban dynamization, and promotion of interculturality, and they supply new products and implement new strategies according to their culture. Then we take that report, our department, and deliver to the department that address these issues in the City Council of Lisbon, this the Department of Social Rights. So with that report that we made in our department, they did a municipal plan to integrate the immigrants that ran it in 2015 to 2017. These dates are here because we had elections on 2017, but the mayor stayed the same. So now they're going to extend this program. They divide it in 4 axes. These 4 axes are budgeted, and they have a lot of initiatives towards create the own business by migrants, disseminate ethnic products, and define the social economic profile. It's not easy, and support immigrants' access to credit institutions. So this is the first part of my presentation. It is the base of the work in Lisbon towards immigrant entrepreneurship. And now I'm going to talk about a lot, not many, but some projects that we do in the City Council that includes entrepreneurship, immigrant entrepreneurship. And we divide it in the 5 steps to action to integrate immigrants. The first one is facilitating and reducing bureaucracy. The second is business viability, capital. The third is regeneration and public equipments. The fourth, retain specialized and qualified labor for future. And then the 5 is access to new economic trends and complement the alternative traditional trade. Starting for the first one. So to facilitate and reducing bureaucracy, we have a one-stop service in our city hall. It's a physical space. And this physical space it's been running 10 years, I think. And it's a place where you can create a business, a new company in a record time, in an hour. So you go to that place and you do everything that you need to have a company in 1 hour. In 1 hour you can create an enterprise in Lisbon. And after we did the report of Delhi, we talked to the responsibles of this place and tell them to do a specific counter for immigrants. So they created a specific counter for immigrants. It's been a huge success. They did a lot of, they have people to talk very languages. They help them when they go there. And it's been a huge success and a great support for immigrants that want to do an enterprise in Lisbon. We can talk also about the Startup Lisboa. I think many of you went into Lisbon at September. It's a Startup Lisboa. I put it here because it facilitates immigrant entrepreneurship. 30% of startups are from foreign entrepreneurs in there. So I think it's a very important place for entrepreneurs from other countries. They do virtual commerce facilitation for them of you don't know Startup Lisboa. They support management, marketing, legal advice, products and service development finances in the startup economic area. So this was the two subjects that I selected as an example to facilitate this kind of entrepreneurship for immigrants. The second is, I think is more important, is the capital, is the money. So we have a project in our department is Lisboa Empreende microchip microcredit service. It won the European Enterprise Promotion Awards in 2015 by the European Commission. We do microcredit. We have a specialized team in our department that about five persons work on this only. So you can access microcredit up to 20,000 euros. This program was launched in 2013. We do personal technical support, business plan, and the service is free. And we support 30% of immigrants' entrepreneurship. I have some numbers over there. In the last years, we have financed about 60 companies and created 2,060 jobs in Lisbon with this program. So, going back a little bit to the report of Delhi about immigrant entrepreneurship, most immigrants see the microcredit as the only chance to get finance in Lisbon because they had a lot of problems to access finance institutions. So the City Hall made an agreement with financial institutions. We don't give the money. We have 2 banks working with us. We just facilitate the business instructions and support the business. And then the banks, going by us, by the City Hall, gives the money to the companies. So we break that barrier that it was difficult to them to go to the banks. It's not easy to talk to the bankers. They talk to us. So, and that make things happen in Lisbon to a lot of companies. It is an effective instrument for job creation, contribute to dignifying the micro entrepreneur. They feel good with this support. And we help people with viable business ideas that have technical skills and the profile of entrepreneurs. The fourth case that I present here is about urban regeneration in the city of Lisbon and creation of public equipments in the grady areas. We created Centro de Inovação de Moraria. It's one of the oldest neighbors in the central city of Lisbon, no Moraria, where Fado was born. And we created in 2015 the first incubator in Lisbon to support projects and business ideas in the creative industries, areas of design, media, fashion, music, etc. Incubation service also, and we do management, marketing, legal advice, etc., etc. So in this Centro de Inovação Moraria, we have 20 companies now, and 2 of them are foreign, just 2. But why did I put this example here? Because of the externalization of the economy. So we did this Centro de Inovação Moraria in a tough neighborhood, most migrant neighborhood. This neighborhood have a lot of companies from immigrants. It was abandoned. It was a tough neighborhood. Instead, it's in the center of Lisbon. So we did this project there, and it was fantastic to see how the economy flourished in the nearby, the Centro de Inovação de Moraria. People from immigrants start to using the Centro de Inovação de Moraria. People that go to the Centro de Inovação de Moraria start using the business economy of immigrants, and this place becomes a community place, and it has a lot of externalities, economic growth that happen with this construction. I have here some photos, just you to. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to see this when we were in Lisbon. Maybe next time. So at black, in the picture in black, you see how it was the place. It was a place. It was destroyed. This is a very old neighborhood. It had a lot of problems here, drugs and so on, like some cities in Europe, I think. And it becomes this modern place in the middle of this, and just the fact that we built this, it changes all the surroundings. The fourth project I'm going to present that we do in our department, it's the objective to retain special and qualified labor. This project is the project Study in Lisbon. So this is one objective of our general director, as he is a teacher in the university also. So we created, so I think it was very important to retain students, international students. In the 5 years, past 5 years, we had an increase of 75% of international students in Lisbon, because Lisbon is a trend now. And our general director says, why not try to do this, these students to stay here and do companies and invest in afterwards, after the studies, and live here and create jobs, etc., etc. So create this platform in 2014. This platform had all kinds of information, actors, initiatives that we do, and we facilitate with. We have facilitated with this platform a lot of connection to the immigration service and other service that they need to address, that they needed to address separately. So now they have everything on one place with this platform. It provides all the information about universities, promotes streamlines, cultural, creative initiatives. It organizes events and meetings. So this was such a huge demand by them that we had to create 1 year now. From now, it made it 1 year of functioning. The Study and Live Lounge, a physical space for this project. So we created a beautiful, not too big place near the universities, where the students now don't only have the platform to go, but we managed to make desks from the immigration service here, and they now have a place where they can arrange everything that they need over here. So they have the platform and they have the physical space, and they can do everything there. And we made it in look, with a good look, to be also a place that they want to go, like a co-working space. This has been also a huge success. Now we're going to, it says 1 year, we're going to rent the next store, and going to amplify this to a next store, because we have a lot of requests and that we have to make it bigger. So now we're going to rent the store that is next to this one and amplify the place. I listed some of the things that we do there. We do visa immigration service, passports, opening bank accounts, accommodation options, public transports, phone cards, jobs, internships, academic entrepreneurship programs, a contact to embassies and consulates. So that's everything is available here in the lounge, Study Lisbon Lounge. I have some numbers of the nationalities, the people that go there. 50% of Brazilians, 20% of Palopes, that's African countries that talk Portuguese, 12% of Middle East, 6 America, 5 Europe, 2 Africa. And now we're starting to do Portuguese language learning over there with elementary level and level A1 with a partnership with Erasmus Life Lisbon and Lisbon Language School. So this is what the first project that I bring it for you to know. The 5.1 is here, is this project, SPEEDUP. Not only SPEEDUP, but the urban manufacturing, the project E plus ecosystem, that was a project that we do with startups, and we pay a lot of startups to go to events abroad, cross innovation, the GP guides from SPEEDUP. So this is our department want to participate in this project because we want to know if there's other options that we can implement in Lisbon that we don't know. So this is the part, and then we put this this knowledge and give it to our economic players and try to implement things in Lisbon, new things that we didn't know that exist and that have success. So basically this was my final presentation. This was the projects that we are doing in Lisbon. Thank you for your attention. And that's all. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. And that brings us to the coffee break. 10 minutes? Yeah. Julie decided you are losing 10 minutes of your coffee break. No, we're running a bit behind. So we're going to do a 10-minute coffee break, and then we'll get together for some discussion again. Wel, dat lijkt...
Staan aan Stefanie.
Nee, ik was aan het denken juist, als je zo livestream jobs doet, dan vragen mensen al hoeveel kijkers zijn er geweest. Dus ik had zoiets van, ja, de volgende keer als ik een job heb of zo, ik heb thuis nog een tweede iMac, dan zet ik daar 200 keer die pagina open en dan heb je 200 kijkers. Leuk, allee, want dat moet gaan. Allee,
Misschien al wel, want dan moet internet dus wel.
ja, dat was ik ook wel aan het denken, want dan, dat is 200 keer een refresh, maar dat moet gaan, dat er is zo.
Maar ja, voilà, dan lijkt het toch wel.
Okay, let's get back. Please join us. I see you're all discussing, but we can discuss in group. Als u. Ze zijn er nog niet, ze. Ze zijn er nog niet.
Micro aan u geven, te beginnen?
Is it because it's the last day that you're afraid of me? You can still come closer if you want. Sit here, lots of place here. Please. Okay, but we're not going to force you. Everybody in their comfort zone. That's okay. Anybody can be here. Everybody. As close as possible. That's the best. Okay, good. So, still have a bit of time to discuss and ask questions, and we've had two very interesting presentations this morning. Anybody wants to kick off with a question to one of the speakers, or just in general to the group? We have a second microphone. Nobody wants to ask questions? Okay. I was wondering, in your presentation, because you talked about female entrepreneurship, but in my experience, all the methodologies you were presenting would just as well be valid for other target groups. Maybe you can say a bit more about that?
Definitely, like I said, we do it with people doing, I think it's about transitions, right? When you're going to set up a business, you have to let go of a lot of things you know. But when you're going to move jobs as well, and we work with this methodology for people that were 50 plus that have just been made redundant. And how scary, because many of them had worked in their company all their lives, and then they're 50, which is, you know, you're very young at 50, and then you have to think about, what do I want in life when you were thinking about retiring 10 years later?
However, if you look at one of the main challenges of female entrepreneurs is self-confidence. So the methodology works well for everyone, but especially for women. And you know, if you think about the model of Tupperware that was very successful in America, we as women, we love telling other women when things are good and when things are really bad. So in marketing, we are, you know, we are the headache of any company, because when we start talking bad about something, nothing can stop us, or good about something. So what I found as well that works very well is that when you bring in women to help each other, it's quite sustainable. So some of the circles that I set up in 2001, they're still meeting, but now they are employing people, and now they're talking about other issues. Because when you are in a company, you have your colleagues or you have your board of directors. But 90% of women who run businesses around the world do not have employees. They're sole traders. They don't want to create empires. It's just more about work-life balance. They want to do something meaningful. They want to do something that can be combined with their families. So it's not that they just really want to become Richard Branson. They're really not interested. They just want to have more of a meaningful life. And very often when I say this, women go like, oh, it's because I'm not an entrepreneur. The word entrepreneur puts off women. I've seen it in my programs. If I put a program for female entrepreneurs, nobody applies. And then when I go like, but you're an entrepreneur. No. I'm just trying to make a living creating art, or I'm a painter. I'm not an entrepreneur. So even the word entrepreneur, how we use semantics for our recruitment, even the word migrant can put off people just because they think, I'm not a migrant. Well, Steve Jobs was a migrant. Okay, then I'm a migrant. So I think it's so important about how we talk about it. And so if 90% of the women around the world run businesses on their own, they're very lonely. And then they will need as well for market research. You know, I have this lady from Sweden that was bringing in bags. So every time she brought bags to her group and was like, do you like it? What color? What color? Oh no, I went to Marks and Spencer's and the new season is red. You should bring red. So the group was really acting as a, you know, as a market research group for them. So it's also important to think about that.
Everybody keeps looking at me.
Wanted to comment on the actually two things. First, you said that you somehow implied that women support women in entrepreneurship, which again I think is sometimes not true, because women tend to be actually the worst enemies of other women. And I think Madeleine Albright has said that there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. But there's this sort of a queen bee syndrome that that women tend to not like other strong women, and entrepreneurs obviously have to be strong. And the other comment I wanted to make about the, as you mentioned, that migrants. So I think for white people who move around, migrate to other countries, we call them expats. But if they're not completely white, then they are migrants. This is again one of these misconceptions about, or like how the Westerners try to make world according to their standards, or like create these double standards. So just maybe you want to comment more on the women's psychology.
Well, I know a lot about the bee impact, you know, the queen's bee. Have you heard about it, the theory about the queen's bee? That when women go up in the ladder, especially in non-traditional fields, they become worse than men. They don't want other women at the top. And that's the queen bee effect. However, a lot of the female entrepreneurs programs that I run, they enroll in the program. So they already have an attitude of caring and giving, and I don't put people just through a form. I interview everyone, either over the phone, because the personality, if you have a group of 5 and one person is not the right person, you don't have a methodology that will work. So it's very important to put teams that as well a balance, you know, of all kinds of different ages. And it's interesting because in the circle you can have people that are 60, somebody that is 20, somebody that has an MBA, somebody that didn't finish school. Because at the end of the day, we are so connected in our fears, in our aims, in what we want to achieve. So I think it will relate to anybody, but of course it will be different if you're forced to be in a group. And the other thing about migrants is interesting because I was submitting a bid under Erasmus, the call that was yesterday. And I was speaking to a Danish organization, and they said to me, no, we don't call them migrants anymore. We call them mobile citizens. We don't call, is anyone from Denmark here? you know. But I was fascinated, and I was like, oh, I'm sure if I put that in my Erasmus proposal, the evaluator is going to go like, what? What are you talking about? But I think it's so important that we think about how we use language. And you can say, okay, let's not call anybody migrants because you know, when I was reading the BBC with the Syrian refugees, the BBC were saying migrants. And then they put a little footnote that said migrants are refugees, asylum seekers, basically everyone, right? But it has become a word that has very negative connotations. So then you can say in our program that we have for migrantpreneurs, the title was Migrantpreneurs. And some of the partners in the project were debating on like, let's not call it migrants because people don't like to be called migrants. And I was thinking, well, you can do that, or you can call it migrants and create a fantastic web platform with Steve Jobs, with really amazing migrants that have made a big difference. So you can start tackling the issue. But I do think if you translate the word migrants in your different languages, it's sometimes more stronger than others. If I think about migrante in Spanish, you know, it has really negative connotations. And I was telling my mother, you know, I'm doing a program about migrantpreneurship because I'm a migrant, and she was like, no, you're not a migrant. You went to study to, and I was like, that's interesting. If my mother thinks it's a bad word. Obviously, there are a lot of things that we still need to do with language.
That's true. I would like to share a little story, quick. 2 weeks ago, we did a local platform union, and I invited a CEO from a startup, a Brazilian. And then and they I said I need some experience from a migrant entrepreneurship. And he called me, I'm not a migrant. I'm a guy who come from the States, got the qualifications, and I have to convince him. I have to say, it's to know your experience, not a migrant as a migrant from necessity. It's a migrant with the option to be a migrant. It's not so the word is just to rephrase that the word is not nowadays. If you have a certain status, if you are a migrant for option, if you decide to be a migrant, they don't want to be called migrants. But we go on with our projects and do the same things. No
Maybe
problems.
we should make up a new name from now on.
Yeah, we start go around the subject and then catch them.
I believe more also in it. It would be better if we can change the perception of the word rather than changing the words all the time, because in the end, I think we also speak, so we have migrants, but we also have something that's like recent newcomers with a different language background. Like, okay, you're talking about stories, and then in the end somebody says, but what are you talking about? Well, migrants. Oh, okay, now I understand. So if we can make that a positive word, that would be a better solution, I think. Good, but it is a target group. What makes it? Because you were talking a lot about migrants now, or migrant. What's the most difficult part? What struck me is that a lot of those people speak Portuguese. I mean, about 70% or something in total. If you take Brazil plus the, is language the most well, in the other countries, then the language the most important barrier, or what are the most important barriers for these people to start being an entrepreneur?
It's one of the barriers, but 50 are resilient. So half of the problem goes away with that. It's about financing mostly, and knowing their needs, because these are tough communities to reach out. Thank you. No, I think
some music for your.
So it's financing and reach to them. Reach to them is also because I think this requires a little explanation, because all these projects that include migrants. We had our mayor of Lisbon, now is the first prime minister of Portugal. His mother is from India. His father is Portuguese. So it was the first mayor to address these issues in Portugal. We also have a long history of migrants ourselves. We are a people of migrant people. So it's easy to, these 10 years, it was easy to talk and work these subjects. He just a little note. He did this. Our mayor, now Prime Minister, did something spectacular. Was the first mayor of Lisbon that reallocate his office to the worst neighborhood, migrant worst neighborhood of Lisbon. So it was the first time it was. He put this office on the worst part of the city. So that brings a message. So I think the barriers, return to your question, money, and talk to them, and that's the know what their needs. It's the more problems, like us in Portugal. Also, the money is very important. I think we share that kind of necessities.
Can I just say something about money? Because I think money is one of the main obstacles. But again, looking at the exercise we did, it's about creativity. And that's why I love the time bank programs. Have you heard about the time bank program? So you bring a group of entrepreneurs, and I'm an accountant, but you're marketing and your language. So you do my proofreading of my website, and I'll sort out your accounts, and you do the branding, and everybody skill swap. And there are a lot of new programs in the UK about that. And I think in your incubators, that's something you can easily implement, where people are called like tickets. So I go like, or you give time. So you get points based on time. So I will volunteer for 2 hours looking at coaching for you, but then you could design my leaflet. Of course, it's difficult to measure in terms of time, because how much is a leaflet based on 2 hours of coaching? But it works so well, and sometimes money is an issue, but there's also a lot of skills that you need. So instead of paying an accountant, if you can get the accountant to help you. So I think that we need to be much more resourceful in looking at other things that can help entrepreneurs.
Sharing knowledge, sharing experience, and then maybe there should be a time bank.
I think every incubator should have a time bank. And I remember when I brought 100 female entrepreneurs into a big church hall, and it was kind of like speed dating, but it was very much about swapping things. And everybody ended up doing something, even looking after their children, because this lady had an issue about childcare, and that stopped her a lot from going to see clients because she was a single mom. So she got a lot of it, the skill swap about looking after her kids while she could go and see clients, which could be a main barrier when you want to do business and you're a lone parent.
We had that. We talked about that yesterday. Anna, where's Anna? There you are. Okay, so you, but in the context of the type of your co-working space, you see that happening too, and that people do stuff for other people, maybe not even noting it out. Do they actually keep bookkeeping of the hours they spend, or is it more informal?
We try to regulate in the sense that we understood, but it was also we co-founders of Spazio Costanza that we couldn't do everything by ourselves. So it was something that started naturally, and we started to regulate it a little bit, because mom coming with different skills, they were sharing this, swapping their activities. So yes, it's something we already do.
And then, if I remember well, from your presentation, there was a mixture of types of profiles of people coming. So it's not all tech entrepreneurs. So
it's so different that it's very easy to make this exchange.
Yeah.
Yes.
That could be a plea for having mixed co-working spaces or communities, at least, where because there's sometimes a tendency to say like, yes, but we are doing a community for aerospace startups, and then you all have aerospace engineers, rocket scientists, and then they have nothing to swap because they all have the same talents. So anybody else has experiences with that, with people in communities connecting, swapping, finding ways to collaborate, share resources, or swap resources?
Probably for you, for me, it was something new that I recently heard. It's like artist in residence, where you have these bigger multinational companies who use creative people coming out of the creative industry, creative startups, to look at standard products from a different point of view. So they put them in a room together with engineers, and they look at a problem, or they look at a like something like a cell phone, and then see, okay, this is a normal product, and but what else could we do with it, or how could we differently approach it? It's called artist in residence. I thought it was an interesting way of looking at things, because you get this different view. It's a completely different approach of a standard product. Besides well, I thought maybe this is something that... I also had a question for you with regards to female entrepreneurship. I think these kind of initiatives are really necessary, because you see it everywhere. Women lack some kind of confidence, and the B syndrome, it is there. But would you agree that it's like a bandage? It's not really solving the issue itself. Shouldn't we more start earlier with? I have a daughter and a son, and you already notice as a mom, although I try to raise her in a way that she's confident, but you approach them differently. You say, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, you're so good." And then to the son, you say, "Yeah, ooh. Yeah. Good to go with your father and see how he does that and how he does that." And you say, so you don't do that on purpose, but it's something that we give to our children from early days. So I think certainly in entrepreneurship and education, we need to do so many things at school. If you think about it, how they educate us at school is to really think quickly. So you go into a classroom, and like the other day, I went to the classroom of my son, and I was not even finishing the question when all the little children had their arms up. It's the one that has the answer, the first one. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just put your hand up. And the reflective kid that is at the back thinking, well, there might be 20 answers to that, is the one that, are you daydreaming? So they have really, really educated. So entrepreneurship in schools has to really happen much, much, much more earlier. Now, gender, I'm extremely fascinated about gender, and a lot of our programs are about that. And it should be very worrying for all of you who have daughters. I have a son who I was trying to give him pink teddy bears, and he was like, why am you giving me a pink teddy bear? Because socializing is very important. Now, there's a very nice video on YouTube called Like a Girl. And you should watch it. It lasts 2 minutes. And in that video shows you that girls, before they become teenagers, they can think they can do anything. The moment they become teenagers, they start thinking about how they look. Now, there's this massive piles of research about gender bias, that when a man is successful, men and women, not only men and women say, oh, he's so clever. When a woman is successful, it's like, oh, she's so lucky. Done by women and by men. And this gender bias, if you give a piece of research to young people, to adults, and the name is Mary, and everything that Mary did, and then they have to say how clever was Mary, etc. They change the name to John with the same story. Everybody, men and women, will give more points to John. So gender bias is something that exists all the time, how we socialize. So it's really hard when you're a mom, because you want your daughter to be much more empowered, but then you have all the peer pressure that you cannot do much about it, the media, about how you have to look. So women are given points about how they look and about if they have a successful partner. And the moment you are a teenager and you depend on that, it's really hard to think about entrepreneurship. But certainly there need to be much more role models of women going like, this is what I did. And I remember in Sheffield, in the city where I am in the north, the mayor, who in this case was a lady, but there's no name for mayoress, she organized a very big event in deprived areas for girls and brought in women from like police women to accountants to lawyers to speak to them. Now, when you ask these girls what they wanted to be, they were all around 8, 11. They all wanted to be footballers' wives, apart from one who said, I want to be a doctor because her mother was a doctor. Because of the media, they thought that the coolest thing to do ever in life was to be the wife of a footballer, and that was their dream. And that's what they were towards aiming for. And that is a really, really sad thing if you think about aspirations. Very scary. But how often do you see female engineers on TV? How often do you see female entrepreneurs on TV? So it's an issue about the media and about us as well, talking about more about exposing their women. If you think about male scientists, you can think about names. If I ask you to think about 5 names of female scientists, you start struggling, right?
There's so many. You know, it was a woman who invented the wipers in the car. It was a woman who invented the dishwasher, the nappies. Did we know that? No. So it's all about, of course, having much more female role models there. For women go like, oh, she's cool and she's pretty. You know, you can't pretend you can be cool, because only nerds are the ones that are clever. So I think we really need to work on that.
Like a girl on YouTube. Look it up, everybody. But not now. Yeah, it sounds like a dangerous thing to look for on the internet, but you never know. Okay, just to be sure. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, thoughts, ideas?
I have another question, because you also point out to the educational. So did you already have the chance to influence policy about that, or do you think about that, and what's your position?
I think more policy is, at least in the UK, I don't know what's happening in other countries, there are more competitions. You know the Dragon's Den? Have you seen the Dragon's Den? You have the equivalent in your countries where 3 entrepreneurs come and people with a lot of money invest. Yeah. Yeah, so they have been introducing that to schools where children come up with ideas and then they're given prizes. So I think there's much more awareness about that in terms of that. Now, when I speak to career advisors, remember when you were at uni, nobody said to you, would you like to run a business? It was not even mentioned. It's still not mentioned. So I think entrepreneurship is something like, well, it may be in the future, but it has to be an option about employability, working for yourself, or trying at least, or finding a job. But, you know, career advisors are not even, in terms of education, still very much into looking at the skills and thinking if that will be the case.
But they say also, I don't know how much % of the future jobs are do not exist already. So in Belgium, we have a good educational system, but it's rather focused on knowledge. So there is a lot of discussion of how we have to transform the education in order to make our children future-proof. So I don't know if it's a discussion that in other countries going around, but yes, we have a very reforms in education are really hard here in Belgium. So I don't know what's the situation like in other countries.
How is education being reformed, or is something being done about education in your country towards entrepreneurship?
Well, in Spain now there is an important debate on that, because the education in the past and to nowadays, it is based on studying hard, use the memory, and now more importance is being given to the soft skills, to adapt to the change, and to learn by doing, and adapt to the new trends. It includes that also the elimination of the paper, the book, and to use more digital tools on that. So we are in the same discussion as you, Belgium. Probably our education system is not so developed as yours, but the discussion is on the table now for the children.
What are the generation of millennials, the young people that were born after 86? And there's a really lovely as well YouTube videos about the thinking set of millennials, and they are thinking, well, they arrive to a job and go like, okay, where's my car and where's my big desk? And they have this other, because parents of millennials wanted to give every single opportunity to their kids. So now I think because there's so much choice, you know, I don't think things are moving so quickly. There's so much choice that they just are petrified. They're called the lost generation. They just do not know what they want. So that, I think, is something that education has to be looking at, because things move so quickly that I think the best thing you can give to any kid is adaptability. And I remember the first time I I had to take my son, he was 4, and he was born in the UK, and I had to take him to Mexico, and I enrolled him on purpose in a school in Mexico where they did not speak, of course, English. And I remember how traumatized he was, because in the UK, children don't tend to touch each other. You know, they're more your space, my space. And in Mexico, we cannot stop kissing each other. So because he was the new arrival in the school, everybody was hugging him and kissing him, and he was petrified, thinking, no, please don't touch me. And I had to make him understand that, well, that's how we do it here. Just enjoy the hug. And it was very, very hard. But I think, although for me it broke my heart because he didn't really want to go there, it was a good way for him to understand that there's not one single rule. You know, that you have to as well adapt to different places. So I think there should be much more mobility programs, and I think the European Commission, that's why with Erasmus, is trying to encourage, I think everybody in part of your education, you should spend 3-4 months in another country. That is where you can really develop the soft skills. The university setting cannot put you in another place where you have to don't speak the language, you have to make friends, you have to get to know how adaptable you are. And I think maybe in education, that will be something I will make from a very young age, children going to other schools in other countries to experience 1 or 2 weeks of what it means to be Russian or French or Italian.
I'm looking at you, just see whether somebody has a question or a remark. I still have one of the subjects that has come back and in the past presentations and discussions is risk. So because entrepreneurship and risk is always associated with one another, and then quite often it was said like, but women are logically more risk averse because they have to take, well, or they are. Shall I say, they don't have to, they have been educated to take care of the family. I'm trying to weigh my words with all these women in the room. No, but it's something that's innate. So women are apparently more risk averse. Now, when you did your presentation, I wrote down, because you explicitly said entrepreneurs have to manage risk. And I wonder whether, I mean, I assume that's not just there because you think they should take risks, but to me there's a big difference. I'm doing my little crusade here in Belgium against people who say entrepreneurship is about taking risks. I think it's successful entrepreneurs are the ones that don't take risks, or at least know how to manage risk, or to avoid risk, or to contain risk. So I was wondering whether you have experience with that, also with regard to then women who are successful women in entrepreneurship.
I think if I would ask you to write down 10 words when you think about risk, you know, for some of you would go like exciting, fear. What else comes to mind when you say risk? The first thing that comes to your mind when you think about risk is danger. What else? Losing things. What else? Yes. And you know, risk is dictated a lot by our experience. If we have lost a lot by doing something, it's like when you fall and then you go like, oh gosh, now I know how it feels, so I should be very careful. Now, they say that sense of humor or even managing risk is very much DNA based. Do you know that sense of humor you inherit, like personality? So there is sometimes, and you can see it with babies, those ones that go and they fall and they stand up, and those ones that go. And of course, depends a lot of parenting. You know, if the mother is risk adverse, we go like, don't do that. Now, the great thing about as well language is that if I ask you, do not think about a green tree, what comes to your mind? A green tree. You cannot think of no. So when you say to a kid, do not fall, what is the kid thinking? The kid has to first think fall and then think. So there are a lot of things that we do for risk and how we use language. But I agree with you, is the managing of risk, but also it just comes about the same example I gave about French, about how we were brought up to believe that you cannot take risks because it's a value. You know, would you go and give your house to the bank and say, if my business does not work well, you can have my house when you have your children there? You know, is it a value? You might think, I think my business will be okay, but I was told never to give up your house. So it is surrounded by the way we were brought up. Now, the other thing is about necessity. When I came to the UK, like a lot of migrants when move or when you have been traveling, you take more risks because you don't have any other option, right? So when they were asking me all the kind of jobs I wanted to do, I would take everything. Probably I wouldn't have never done that in Mexico. I wouldn't have gone like looking after the elderly. No idea. I look after my grandma on Friday, but no idea. But yes, I can do that. I don't think I would have done that back home because you're in your comfort zone. So risks as well are related to non-comfort zones. So we have to as well push our kids. And something I do a lot is the research on the resilience. And the resilience is the capacity that you have to bounce back when things do not work well for you. And some people, something happens to them and that's it, that's the end. Think about a divorce or something, a death. You know, sometimes some people can bounce back very quickly and others do not. So resilience, which I think is the core of anything in ours, unfortunately there's no shortcut. The more you have suffered, unfortunately, the more resilient you become. So when we want to protect our kids of not suffering or we're taking away, unfortunately, the resilience that I think, do you think resilience is very much related to risk, how you manage risk as well? Because then you are not so afraid of what will happen if you know that you can come back again. And I just relate to the concentration camp story that I was telling you about. It's about the survivors were those ones who had much more resilience.
Anybody else wants to chime in on risk and how it affects us and how it's maybe different, or how we can take it away? Because I think I don't remember who, but one of the presentations or one of the discussions, somebody said, "Well, we are privately funded, but it would be nice to have some government support just to be able to take some risks, so that if it goes wrong, it would be good. And we don't need the money all the time, so the government can keep the money, but you know, we just want you to be there in case, so that we don't, well, if it goes wrong, that it doesn't go wrong too much," which is basically what the government often does in many other situations as well, in healthcare, in social security, I mean, in saving banks. Yeah, they do save banks. That's okay.
Talk about resilience. Status, right? There are no more people that are more resilient than the immigrants. They suffer a lot, and they have those skills. So, for example, having the support of the government, I think it's always good to assess risk. Not necessarily, because a lot of people don't need that. I think in a broader way, the government can help, should facilitate, and have a net, because the government is you and me. So if you want a good economy, you have to put some taxes on it, I think. Not just private, but we have to support those people that are not so entrepreneurs, so quick doing things. They are more slower, but they are good also, okay? They are not on the top, but they want a little bit more. So I think government and the public money is important. But it should stop when you are taking jobs from the private. So it's a difficult equilibrium. You, for instance, in Lisbon, you just have a partnership with a startup. It's a success. We don't do more startups because there are about 8 private, and we cannot do startups because the other ones go bankruptcy. So we have to measure the equilibrium of the public intervention to not disrupt the private entrepreneurship. So if it's equilibrium, it's okay to, in my opinion.
Because you referenced Steve Jobs several times as a good example of an active migrant, and he has famously said that you have to stay hungry and stay foolish. And many Estonian startup entrepreneurs have actually told me that maybe one of the reasons why there are so many startups in Estonia and the rest of Eastern Europe is just the fact that we are so hungry and so foolish, coming from the Soviet background as compared to the Western Europe, where people have always lived in prosperity, and you have nothing to, well, you don't have the same push as we do. So we can, and actually living in Silicon Valley, I felt the same thing, that I have much more in common with my friends who come from China, although geographically they are from much further away. But because they also come from a communist background, we share the same values. And we are hungry and foolish. So, and now because Estonia has been independent again for 25 years, I think we're kind of losing this hunger and foolishness. We're becoming too smart and too comfortable. And this is again a question: how do you keep up that hunger? How do you stay foolish? How will you be able to take risks?
Very interesting question. How do you stay hungry?
Portugal, this is a new thing because we've always been conservative people. We didn't, I think, we didn't have a cultural basis of assuming risks. We my generation and the generation of my fathers wanted a job for life. The difference now is the people that the younger people now they have. I think it's due to the knowledge of other types of living, the meeting of foreign friends, meeting friends, and these new generations want to cut back from the past, from our past, and are more driving to do foolish things. And the necessity, we had a lot of young people, they have migrate with a resection to England and other European countries, and they are able to take the risk. So is that. So, but I think the Latin countries are not so driving to risk. I don't know, what's your opinion in Spain? In Portugal, we are a little bit conservative.
The mentality is been changing, fortunately, but in the past it happens the same as in Portugal, especially in the south of Spain more than in the north of Spain, in which we have two main issues. One, that to be entrepreneur, well, in that some years ago we didn't call entrepreneurs but businessmen, was positioned the word as a negative word for most people, because the businessmen were rich people with big lands, and most of the population were working in agriculture for those people or in the industries. So the concept of businessmen was negative. And the time passed, and most people were also conservative from those times, from the previous times, and prefer to be public servants before to be entrepreneurs themselves. Fortunately, in the last year, with many activities, with many motivational, the communication, etc., the mind of the people is changing, and more young people want to opt for to be entrepreneur, or at least to have opened that possibility. But this has been a process in which we are advancing, and unfortunately, less people now want to be public servants, more people to work, to develop abroad, to be entrepreneur, to work in innovative companies, etc. So we come from the same situation as Portugal, and unfortunately, we are progressing on that aspect.
How that is happening in that I saw in the engineering school, the University of Sheffield. And the thing is that it doesn't matter if you're living in a comfortable position, something that we are always hungry for is about making a difference. So what this academic did for engineers is that she invited disabled kids and said to these engineers, your project is to look after these disabled kids and look at new products that can help their life a bit more. So the engineers suddenly, you will think, well, you are very comfortable. A lot of engineers don't think about entrepreneurship. They go, I'm going to find a super job. And they were aerospace engineers, which will be very hard to become an entrepreneur in that area when there's so many very well-paid jobs in aerospace engineering. But it transformed the curriculum, and now every year it is being done because suddenly the engineers were like, okay, I want to have something meaningful. So maybe you can also get hungry or make people hungry, understanding the nature of human beings, that is about making a difference and trying to stay there once you're gone, you know, to leave some legacy. And it was beautiful to see all these products that they come up to help all kinds of children, especially with impairment mobilities, coming up with fantastic new products. And some of them became products now in the market to help disabled kids. So that's a good example of how.
Okay, I would like to round off the morning session here. We have some service announcements and requests. First, before we leave, Julie absolutely wants a group picture. I think we all want a group picture. So once I've finished my service announcement, come up front, and then I think this is a good place to can maybe put a nice background on there and have a nice picture. Then there are 3 options. Well, to get to the Dambruggestraat, so to Microstart. There is the bus, where you can put your luggage, or your luggage is already in. So that's the comfortable way. Then there is the short walk, but it's a bit of a boring walk. So that's 16 minutes according to Google, so that means it's 14 minutes in reality. And then there's a bit of a longer walk. So we do have time. I could take you, if I don't get lost, through some of the student neighborhood. You see a bit of that. It's not spectacular or anything, but it shows you a bit more of Antwerp. So we're not going to do 2 separate walks. It's going to be either, if people want to walk, then we'll decide which one we'll take. Who wants to go, let's just to be clear, who wants to go by bus? Okay. So then everybody, who wants to do the shorter, boring walk? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Who wants to do a bit longer, a bit more interesting walk? I'm afraid everybody is going the longer, a bit more interesting walk. But do make sure that your luggage and stuff you want on the bus, that it's on there now. Well, let's do that first, and then come back for the group picture. Okay? Yeah. The group picture first.